Hello, West Ham fans. I hope you're all doing well. Another week is starting, and interestingly enough, West Ham won't be on the pitch until Monday, which in a way feels like the perfect time to think about changes, since there's a whole week to prepare. As has already been said, the situation feels a bit different from what many expected. We didn't see that. Immediate reaction, they are not exactly automatic, but the kind of response you'd imagine after a defeat. Graham Potter being dismissed, and the club posting the corner flag image alongside an official note wishing him well for the future. And honestly, I'm trying to find a way of saying this without it sounding manipulative because that's not my intention. In a strange, almost paradoxical way, I think half of that decision would make sense, but the other half wouldn't. Let me explain it better. The general expectation was that Potter would already be gone, and that Nuno Espirito Santo would be coming in. Just like on other occasions when he left one club and almost immediately took over another. But that didn't happen. Not this time. And from what I've heard, I don't believe Nuno will be the next West Ham manager. If he does come, it will be because he managed to use the situation to his financial advantage. His stance has shifted. At first he showed no interest, and from all indications he still doesn't seem genuinely interested in the job. I was talking with a friend recently and he said, in truth, Potter never really wanted the West Ham job under the current conditions. And I agree that the issue isn't necessarily about money. I don't think it's the right move for him, and I don't think it's the right move for West Ham in the long run either. That's exactly why I never declared myself as firmly Potter in, but I also never shouted for Potter out. Because looking at the list of potential replacements, honestly, none of the names at the top of the betting markets really excite me. When you look at the betting odds, there are 22 names listed top to bottom. And of course, you can also flip it bottom to top since speculation is huge and changes quickly. The detail is right away you notice some names in gray, which means they're currently employed. Among them are Nuno Slaven Bilic and Sean Dyche. Honestly, none of them really excite me. Curiously, there are names not even on the list like Rafa Benitez. And if we think in terms of the patterns the club has shown in the past, that might actually be one of the more likely options. Then looking more closely, you see others missing too, like Brendan Rodgers, which is odd. Rodgers is someone David Sullivan has always wanted at his clubs, whether at Birmingham or West Ham itself. It's an old desire, just like his long-standing fixation with Rafa Benitez. Of course, Rodgers is currently at Celtic, but even so, he's a name that can't be ignored. Now, there's one manager in particular who really catches my eye, Liam Rosenior. If you look at what he achieved in League One, the results and the style of play speak for themselves. It was extraordinary. Absolutely outstanding work. In terms of a modern manager, one who works with intensity, a clear identity, and up-to-date methods, he feels like a fresh, different option, someone who could genuinely change West Ham's direction. But here's the problem, as I've said before, with the way the club is currently run, I don't believe a manager of that profile could really last. West Ham has a very particular, almost rigid internal structure, and that weighs heavily. If we look back over the last 15 years, the managers who really delivered results were David Moyes and Sam Allardyce, two absolutely old-school coaches. They didn't rely on committees or technical directors deciding who came in or who left. Their style was simple, one man in charge, centralizing everything. The final word was always theirs, from the squad to signings, from negotiations to the style of play. And within that model, they managed to get results out of the group. Big Sam did it, Moyes did it too, each in their own way. By contrast, the more progressive types, those who bring a modern model of management with multiple voices and shared structures, have never found real space at West Ham. My honest opinion is that until the club radically changes how it's run, that kind of coach simply won't last here. And that's why when I look at the whole list of names, the feeling that remains is frustration. Very few of them actually excite me. Some feel like more of the same, others just don't match the reality of West Ham. In the end, we're stuck between the pragmatism we already know and the idea of renewal that still feels far too distant under the current structure. Take Michael Carrick, for example. I think he's gained valuable experience at Middlesbrough, but again, he represents that modern manager profile. He hasn't shown anything truly extraordinary yet that would justify a big step up to a club like West Ham. Edin Terzic is another curious case. His spell wasn't brilliant overall, but he did have the achievement of reaching a Champions League final. He knows about West Ham, was heavily linked with the job at one point, but if we go by the most reliable reports, he turned the opportunity down. And to be honest, the overall situation doesn't look healthy at all. Realistically, it's not encouraging. As I've mentioned before, plenty of reports have come out recently. Someone like Jacob Steinberg, a journalist I follow, closely pointed out that the likelihood is Graham Potter will have 2 more games to prove himself. After that, a decision is expected during the international break, and in my opinion, that makes sense. This is exactly what I mean when I say half of that decision is right in the case of Potter and Nuno. I think the board got part of it correct, but the wrong part is Potter still being in charge. Because once you set the condition that these games will save his job, any manager's position becomes unsustainable. Players feel it in the dressing room, fans pick up on it in the stands, and the whole environment gets poisoned. On the other hand, there is a genuine opportunity here, not necessarily for a miracle solution, but to make use of what we already have inside the club. West Ham has plenty of people within the coaching staff and the academy who are closely tied to the club. Names like Robson and Kevin Keane stand out. Kevin himself has done the job before. Nowadays he works more as a consultant, but even so he could be used as a temporary solution for the next 2 games. And this is the central point. I don't believe it's right to rush into an appointment. That's one of the reasons why I never demanded Potter's immediate dismissal. Because I know exactly what would happen. The club would panic, bring in a quick firefighter, and we'd end up stuck in another cycle of 2 or 3 years of stagnation. If Nuno really wanted the job, he might be an acceptable option. But just speak to Forest or Wolves supporters, and you'll always hear the same verdict: he's a 50-50 manager. A bit like David Moyes. Half the fan base back him, the other half can't stand his style. Yes, it's true he took Wolves into European competition and also managed to qualify Forest for Europe. But in the end, he splits opinion clearly, and I believe the same thing would happen at West Ham. He might energize the fans for a few months, but we know how this story ends. After a year, maybe 18 months, things begin to unravel. The football gets criticized, the results drop, and suddenly everything looks worse. Even during Moyes' tenure, there were plenty of occasions where we won matches without playing well. That papered over a lot of cracks. And it's precisely for that reason I think the board were right not to react immediately. At least they've given themselves a chance to stop and think. With the protests and the boycott already planned for the Brentford match, there's now a genuine opportunity to reflect calmly. If none of that had happened, the petition, the pressure from fans, perhaps by now Nuno or even Sean Dyche would already be in charge. But at this point it feels like they're reconsidering more carefully what might truly be best for the club. Maybe they'll come to the conclusion that Sean Dyche is the right man. Personally, I wouldn't be excited by it, but even so, he would have my full support as West Ham manager. The same goes for Potter. As long as he's in charge, he has my backing. I'll never want the team to lose just to force someone out. That's not my style, never has been. Of course there are fans who think differently, and that's their right. But I'll never flip like that. There are still just over 20 matches to go, and we're only at the start of the Premier League season. Other teams are picking up points, but if we get things right, there's still a chance to turn it around. Do I think we'll manage that turnaround? Probably not. But there is at least a spark of hope. I even believe the protests might be creating some internal division over who should take over, which suggests there could actually be serious conversations happening at board level. Because if there's any real risk of relegation, Potter will definitely be sacked. The board have already shown they have no problem pulling the trigger. Sometimes a bit late, but they've sacked plenty of managers before. And with the international break coming up, it feels inevitable that a decision will be made. 2 more games, then comes the final call. The first game after the break is against Brentford, the very match marked by the boycott. And here's a thought. Let me put on my conspiracy hat. If the club were to announce a manager who really pleased a large section of the fan base, would supporters rally behind him straight away in that Brentford game? Honestly, I don't know. But here's the key point: who would genuinely please you? And it can't be the easy answer like anyone but Potter. I want a real name. For me, someone like Liam Rosenior could be interesting. He's a modern coach, an intellectual type, a proper thinker of the game. But would he really fit in here at West Ham? I have my doubts. Flavio Conceição has also been mentioned. He's charismatic on the touchline, lives every moment with intensity. Potter, unfortunately, doesn't show that same spark. Oliver Glasner falls into a similar category. Not exactly a big personality off the pitch, but you can absolutely feel his passion during the 90 minutes. And Thiago Motta is another name that comes up, someone who, at the very least, could bring new ideas to the team. Xavi did well at Barcelona, but in my view, almost any coach would succeed in that environment. He still hasn't proved himself outside of there. Rosenior for me remains the most intriguing option. Yet again, though, he belongs to that modern school of managers, and I'm not convinced that kind of profile truly works at West Ham, at least not with the way the club is currently run. It's going to be interesting, even fascinating, to see what happens next. I imagine we'll see at least half a dozen names circulating in the headlines and discussions. To be perfectly honest, none of them excite me all that much. Maybe Rosenior, maybe Kieran McKenna, but still, it's not that overwhelming sense of enthusiasm. And here's the central issue to succeed as West Ham manager. It's not just about what you do on the pitch. You also need the personality off it. Someone who can genuinely connect with the fans. That's why names like Michael Carrick or even Slaven Bilic keep coming back into the conversation. Bilic had a fantastic second season despite all the challenges created by the move to the new stadium. Even so, he carried something many others don't, that aura, that presence that simply commands respect. And that's something I really miss. It might sound like an exaggeration, but the simple fact that Mourinho was once linked with the job shows exactly what I mean. Mourinho carries that aura. Picture a manager stepping onto the pitch and everyone instantly thinking, that man has presence. West Ham haven't had anyone like that in a very, very long time. In truth, maybe Sam Allardyce was the last to bring it in his own way. I clearly remember an away match at Burnley. He walked across the pitch to the dugout and the entire stadium reacted at once. He was the perfect villain, waving at the Burnley fans, taking all the abuse and still commanding the scene as if it were theater. That's what aura looks like. Now, before we wrap things up, there's an important bit of news that could directly affect West Ham. And this time, it's not about the manager. It's about the goalkeeping situation, which has been nothing short of a nightmare this season. Mads Hermansen, signed for around 20 million from Leicester, has been a real disappointment so far. He looks nervous, struggles badly with set pieces, and those mistakes against Sunderland and Chelsea only underlined the problem. The Spurs game was the final straw, and that's why Areola started against Crystal Palace. But let's be honest, neither of them inspire much confidence as a long-term solution. And that's why the rumors around Pierce Charles are picking up so much traction. Sheffield Wednesday are said to be asking for about £4 million, double what was offered in the summer. Charles is only 20 years old already, Northern Ireland's first-choice keeper, and even though he's currently sidelined with a shoulder injury, he's seen as the club's biggest asset right now. The idea would be for West Ham to buy him now and then loan him straight back to Wednesday until the end of the season. Of course, he's still raw. In 18 senior appearances, he's managed just one clean sheet. He's nowhere near the finished article, but the talent is obvious. And in West Ham's current situation, maybe that's exactly what we need: fresh blood, someone to be developed properly who can bring something different between the sticks. He wouldn't solve everything straight away in January, but looking ahead, it could prove to be a very smart piece of business. After all, given the way things are going at the back, almost any change already feels like an upgrade. So that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment, share, and of course subscribe to the channel for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time.